G'day, my name's Steve Weyland and welcome to Two Blokes and a Motorbike. This show's about two mates restoring classic motorcycles from the 70s, the 80s, right up to the late 90s. One bike at a time, because quite frankly, we're easily confused. We've got a lot of experience to draw on, so hopefully you'll come along for the ride and we'll keep it entertaining.
Two Blokes and a Motorbike is brought to you by bikereview.com.au.
This time round we chuck on the brakes. We pack up everything, pull up stumps and hit the road before the authorities get wind of what we're up to. And after the dust settles at our new location, Mike gives the carbies a good talking to. I can't stop dreaming about riding this bike. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's definitely time to put the brakes on, which is exactly what we're going to do. Right, we're not at a picnic. This is brake assembly day. Take it away, Mikey.
Thanks. We're going to rebuild these front calipers and the rear caliper here. They've all been stripped and speed blasted and painted, and we've got all the seal kits here for the rear one. The piston were okay for the front one, so we're reusing those, and got new seals of course for them, and the dust seals are okay, and all these other little bits and pieces too. So firstly, let's put the seals in.
Okay, we're going to move this along because it does take quite a while. Basically, we're replacing any worn parts and all of the rubber seals with brand new ones. And remember, when you're dealing with things that hold brake fluid, you want to take your time. So the front calipers go on. We've painted these satin black with a special caliper paint which will last for years. Once again, we're only lightly nipping up the bolts. But, like all the other nuts and bolts on this bike, if we don't double check them before the first test ride, this thing's going to come apart faster than a leper on a roller coaster. And I'll be the mug riding it.
Now we're going to pick the rear caliper.
And no, Mike's not taking the piss. The Suzuki parts listing spells it as caliper, and Mike and I have known it as such ever since. Very important torque arm, which stops the caliper from spinning around on the disc once it grabs hold of the disc. Not very effective without it. We had the torque arm powder coated to look new, only to find out later that a brand new one was only 27 bucks. I know, go figure. I then gave the brake hose banjo fitting a quick dose of metal polish. There we go, put them in there now. That is nice and shiny, folks. That's as shiny as your granny's bald spot.
Now we're going to fit the rear master cylinder, a brand new unit. It's not cheaper to get these ones replaced at the moment, as in repaired. To get this re-sleeved was nearly $180, and a whole new units with everything inside it was $230. So yeah, it's at this point in time when you can still buy these from Suzuki, it's cheaper to replace them. So this pin goes in from the back like that. Then there's a little washer and a little R-clip. There, holds that in place. Then we have a couple of bolts up the top here.
And yet another brand new part goes into place.
So that's your rear master cylinder on, so the brake pedal hooks onto that. As you push the brake pedal down, pushes that piston up, or the piston's inside there, pushes that rod up into the piston which causes the brake fluid to push back down the brake hose, which goes to the caliper. Caliper pushes, the brake fluid goes into the caliper, pushes those pistons in onto the brake pads, onto the brake disc, and that's hopefully how it stops, hopefully. Well, as good as a 82 750 can. Alright, now we're going to connect up the rear brake hose to the caliper.
Mike now fits the banjo bolt with brand new crush washers. Whenever you reconnect a brake hose fitting, you should always fit new washers. You always put one crush washer each side, and just like incontinence pads, always use new ones for a no-leak guarantee. Oh, and don't over-tighten the bolt. Then we connect the other end of the hose to the master cylinder. And once again we've got genuine parts, because why wouldn't you? You're not going to find a piece of hose anywhere in the world that's suitable for this job that happens to be that shape and length, etc. Of course, it's got to be brake hose as well, so it has to be the right material. Even the original fitment hose clamps are still available from Suzuki and not expensive, so it's another no-brainer.
Okay, now we're going to fit the rear reservoir onto the rear master cylinder with the new clamps and the new hose. So the clamps are already sitting there loose, so we'll just push that onto there.
The new brake reservoir, or reservoir if you prefer, is temporarily bolted on, as it has to come off later when we fit the airbox.
Bolt in there.
Then the hose clamps are tightened. Right, let's move to the front of the bike.
These go from the anti-dive unit, front of the bike here. These are more loose for the moment until we get everything on.
I thought I might give the front brake hoses a new lease of life. First they got a good scrub, then I masked them off. The springs on the hoses protect them from rubbing. Removing the surface rust from them was too difficult and replacing them impossible, so I gave them a paint. I went with black because trying to get the original alloy look was just too hard to accomplish. And here's a tip, boot polish on the rubber brings them up a treat and lasts for years. So on go the rest of the hoses. Let's kick off the small matter of finishing off the brake system by adding a little fluid. Now I know this apparatus looks like something from an adult bookshop, but it's actually a brake fluid vacuum pump.
You see that on the pressure gauge, if you can see that, pumps up.
After topping the master cylinder with said fluid, Mike pumps up the vacuum pressure and pumps the brake pedal. Then it's my job to crack open the bleed nipples to allow it to be sucked through to the caliper. Definitely a much easier job with two people. And once we're satisfied we've got a firm pedal on the rear brake, we move on to the front. This is not a new master cylinder, it's one we've simply cleaned up and repainted, because quite frankly they're hellishly expensive, and if you can get away with using a good second-hand one, by all means. The rear ones aren't as expensive, they're quite good value. It's hardly even worth refurbishing a second-hand rear one, but the fronts definitely, if you can, do it. Now we've just got this in here for now, it's a rusty old bolt, but it's just so we can bleed the brakes. We're going to put a new lever on later with a new bolt. So on go the spruced up brake hoses. It's easier to polish components before you fit them, because quite often you can't get to them after you've fitted them, yet you can still see them. So if you polish them up, put in a little bit more effort when you're assembling, they look better when they're on the bike. As far as squeezers go, Mike is hard to surpass, and my nipple working skills are legendary. However, even after what seemed like hours of bleeding, that bastard anti-dive system proved to be our nemesis yet again. So we'll come back to this later and you can see how we fixed it.
Okay.
Okay, we're relocating. This time we're keeping the location a secret
because we found we had carloads of groupies out the front. Of course, they might have been undercover cops, but they're probably still big fans of the show.
Right, we had a lot of bikes to move and a lot of other stuff, like the bead blaster. But first you have to empty it. You'll need plenty of buckets and always wear a breathing mask and gloves, like we do. We had seats to move, we had air boxes to move, and wheels full of spiders, and paintwork. And wait, let's go back to the spiders. This is a case where tool selection is vital. Only a novice or complete fool would reach for a Phillips head. But the most precious cargo of all were the bikes. For example, Mike's restored Z1R Kawasaki, our CB750 Honda that still needs a minor going over, and not forgetting the star of the show, our Project Katana, along with a couple more of the same, and of course our dirty old GPX 600. At our age, we're a bit like a couple of old vintage bikes. Not exactly very streamlined, and with barely enough horsepower to keep upright. But we can exert ourselves when we have to.
We're doing the big move at the moment. We're transporting the bikes that we have from one property to another. And as usual, Mike's game plan's about as well organised as, I don't know, Custer's campaign at the Little Bighorn. But we're getting there, one bike at a time, and all the other bits and pieces.
This is Mike's new workshop. It's a smaller space, but it's air conditioned, which means no more fan noise in the background, and better still, no more shorts and tank tops. And what do you do when you've got an empty space? You fill it full of crap as fast as you can. And the GPX is the first piece of crap to go in. We weren't really expecting any celebrity status from this show, and guess what? We were right.
Car went past us at the lights. Woman's waving at me in the window. Yeah. So I pulled her next to her, went down the window, and she goes, "I'm sorry, you're not who I thought you were."
Somehow we successfully move all of the bikes unscathed. All of the workshop equipment and benches followed, and even the new paintwork remained intact. In fact, Barry the Blue Tongue was the only thing we left behind. So the time had come to say goodbye to the old shed. The fan goes off, the lights go out, and the garage door shuts for one last time. As a lot of our viewers are already aware, when you need to transport a bike, you want to take care not to inflict any damage on it. There's nothing more frustrating than transit damage on a bike. Some equipment, like this wheel lock, can help. After bolting it to Mike's new trailer, we fit some tie-down hooks to each side to make life easier. Wheel locks work well on naked bikes and help keep the bike upright. But beware when loading fully faired machines, especially with 16-inch front wheels. Just be sure it clears the belly pan and front guard when it locks into place. The same goes with your ramp. Use a good one and make sure it's long enough. I've seen horrible gouges on exhaust systems and lower fairings when they snag on the top of the ramp. If the angle is too much, try a brick under the back of the ramp, and having someone watch while you're doing it is always a good idea. And if you're in a van, check the mirrors and screen will clear as well. I've had to load hundreds of different bikes over the years, and in the 80s we pretty much relied on 2 tie-down straps and a quick prayer to the gods of gravity. Now with wonderful things like these handlebar straps, you can keep the tie-downs away from the paintwork. You still only need 2 straps. Just make sure the wheel is pulled forward and down, preferably against something solid, and always keep the front wheel straight. Don't go too hard or you'll pop the fork seals and cost yourself another big job. And don't ever tie it down on the stand. It'll only bend or break it off. Keep it bolt upright on 2 wheels and let the suspension absorb some of the bumps. I know a lot of this sounds really obvious, but you'd be amazed at how much damage I've seen caused to bikes simply through bad loading procedures. Remember, these are big top heavy bikes, and just like when you're on the balls of your feet at the traffic lights, if you keep the bike bolt upright, you're not fighting against any weight. And if you can't find a big strong mate to help you do this stuff, get Mike. Well, as you can see in the background, it hasn't taken Mike long to get some shelving and get this place organised. The bike's on the bench and we're back underway. Apart from changing locations, we also had to have a break in filming for about a week because young Mikey went to, well, let's just say he had a brown dog barking at the back door. And that dog kept on barking for the next 5 days. Consequently, he lost about, what'd you lose, Mike? About 6 kilos or so?
About 8.
So kids, there's some advice from Uncle Steve. If you want to lose weight in a hurry, eat something dodgy. Now today, folks, we're going to fit the rear inner guard, which sits under this front inner guard. This has been painted. We just got this, just plastic, but it looked really tacky and scratched, so we've just had the painter spray that one for us. It's come up a lot better than it was. We've just got to make sure we fit that up under there nice and snug.
Okay.
That'll do.
That'll do.
Alrighty.
I'll introduce the tail light. This is the tail light.
Knowing that we can't replace this tail light with a new one because they're not available anymore, we very carefully fit it to the bike. However, it seemed to take longer to plug the tail light in than it did to mount it. Auto electrician. Our next step is to mount the coils and plug leads.
Coils need cleaning, so we're going to clean them. And the old toothbrush, for the worst of it.
This is just being a little bit fussy, folks. You really don't need to clean the coils too much because no one's ever going to see them. When the tank's on the bike, they're out of sight. But the plug leads are always visible. It does pay to make them look as good as they can. Like most 4-cylinder bikes from this era, the coils are mounted to the frame above the motor. They don't have to be the right coils for this model, but they do have to mount out of harm's way. Now it's time to talk carbies. Folks, Mikey had these aqua blasted by a local chap. He's done a marvellous job. They're not painted, they're just aqua blasted. That's come up extremely well. What do we do with these?
He polished them.
He polished those. Wow, and that was a total price of how much?
140 bucks.
140 bucks for 4 carbies, done like that. Worth every penny, guys. You ain't going to do that with a toothbrush and some Kero, I can tell you right now. While Mike gets his bits organised, let me just explain to those who aren't aware. Most motorcycles of this era have an individual carby per cylinder, which means they are thereby small and fiddly to work on. Indeed, a lot of car mechanics won't touch bikes because unless you have the patience of a watchmaker, the smaller scale of things and their complexity can drive you crazy. Fortunately, Mike's already crazy, so he loves this stuff.
Today we're going to be assembling the carburetors. That's what they should look like when they're all together, except they're not black, but same sort of thing. These ones we've had vapor cleaned, so they're all shiny new again. All the crud's been taken out of them. They've been ultrasonically cleaned, so hopefully they're clean internally as well. And get them all back together. So first of all, we do is put the chokes in.
The 4 separate choke plungers are connected by one rod which is yet to be installed.
Right, that's the chokes in. Now we put in the fuel pipes and hook them all together. And they have to hook together in a certain order. They all look the same, but they're all different, these carbs. And because of where that hooks on each carburetor, they have to go in a certain order. And so that would be number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1 as it sits on the engine.
As exciting as Mike makes it sound, carby building has about as much suspense and drama as Morris dancing, and it's just as visually stimulating. It's critical that it's done right, but it's a bit like origami or needlework or doing number 2s. It's the sort of job that no one can help you with. Now there's a lot of tubes on the carbies, so if you've got another set to copy from, you're ahead of the game.
Now that they're all in the right order, we put a bar across to hold them all steady. Doing it the right way. It goes on that way. Okay. So we're putting all stainless steel screws in instead of the ones that have got Phillips heads on them. And they would have had Phillips heads standard, but they tend to strip. Now this bar holds them all nice and steady, and the reason it's black and not alloy is it was just too far gone to clean up, and we didn't want to get it highly polished or anything like that, so we just thought we'd paint it black in keeping with the rest of the bike. It's got a black engine after all, so a little bit of black here and there is not going to hurt it.
Mike fits the second rail, which helps keep everything together. I've got to tell you, this took ages, and like Mike, making carby building look sexy is hard work. Then in go the emulsion tubes, the pilot jets, and the little thingies with springies, or if you prefer, the mixture adjusting screws.
Tiny middle metal washer, then you've got a little rubber washer that goes on each, like that.
Then Mike fits them and tweaks them.
So that base hits the bottom, and then you take it out a turn and a half. So half a turn, 1 turn, half a turn. So that's 1.5 turns, and that's pretty much your standard settings, give or take. Fine tuning you can do after the carbs are on the bike and the engine's running, and you can get the carbs all balanced, and then where they adjust the butterflies with these 3, and you adjust the mixture screws with these 4. But for the moment, about a turn and a half is about right. So we'll do the levels in a minute, but firstly we'll just get them in there.
He's talking about the carby floats, by the way, which means we're nearly at the end.
Well, they can go in the wrong way, but that would be the wrong way, that way. But if you see here, they've got a little tab there, and that stops them falling out once they're fitted, so you know that that's the right way. So we've got these little pins here. They go in the side like that. So now we set the float height, and according to the manual it's 22.4 plus or minus 1 mil.
Mike uses a set of digital verniers to be precise.
We're on 22.88, and that's within spec. 23.67. That'll do. Everyone a winner.
Just be very thankful he didn't sing it. One of the last stages is the carby bowls and gaskets.
It goes on there. Oops. It goes that way, on there. And they're all the same, as far as it doesn't matter which one goes on which.
The fuel bowls go on the bottom, then a quick flip over and the slides go in the top after Mike checks the diaphragms have no holes or tears. That just leaves the top caps to go on after, and they're good to go. Right, we've come to the end of another show. Time to read another letter from a viewer. Dear Sirs, I know they may look out of place. However, I'm looking to fit a set of sturdy pannier boxes to my Ducati Dharma. Can you please advise on the best method to mount them? Kind regards, Kenneth. Geez, you're the master of understatement, Kenneth. You might as well say JFK died of a headache. Look out of place. Why don't you hook up a trailer hitch to the bike while you're at it? Then you can not only destroy the look of the bike, you can destroy the subframe as well. Seriously though, Kenneth, if you go ahead with your panniers, always make sure you balance out the load. You want to put your almanac and your cardigan in one side and your pipe and slippers in the other. Gronk. Anyway, Cheers, viewers. See you next time. Now, we didn't get time to fit the carbies, so next episode, we fit the carbies. We fit the exhaust. We fit an engine cover, the foot pegs and levers, the chain guard, the rear airbox, and even the switch blocks get a spruce up. We're coming to the end of this build now, and you won't want to miss a moment.
Two Blokes and a Motorbike is brought to you by bikereview.com.au.
Like me on a Sunday morning.
I don't have to come here to get a view. No, you're right. You can go anywhere. That's right. Tweaking. Mike's just going to tweak his nipples.